The wrench slipped from Taeyong's hand and floated away in the low gravity. He cursed under his breath and grabbed it, before it drifted too far. Working outside the station was always difficult. But today, the asteroid belt seemed especially unforgiving. Small rocks kept bouncing off his helmet, remnants from last week's meteor shower that had damaged 3 sensor arrays. Taeyong Park had been a mechanic on Hanul 17 for 2 years now. The mining station sat deep in the asteroid belt, far from Earth, and farther still from anything resembling comfort. Most days, he fixed broken equipment, patched holes in the hull, and tried not to think about how much he missed fresh air. The pay was decent, but the isolation wore on everyone who worked here. He finished tightening the last bolt on the sensor array and checked his oxygen levels. Still had an hour left. Enough time to inspect the debris field near Section 7 before heading back inside. His supervisor, Dae Ho, had mentioned some unusual readings from that area. Probably just more meteor damage, but it needed checking anyway. As Taeyong maneuvered around a large asteroid using his suit's thrusters, something caught his eye. A flash of white against the dark rock. He moved closer, his heart rate increasing. Nothing out here should be white. Everything was gray, brown, or black. Then he saw it clearly, and his breath caught in his throat. Trapped between 2 pieces of twisted metal debris was a creature, an alien creature. It looked somewhat like the leopards he had seen in old Earth documentaries, but its fur was pure white, almost glowing in the harsh starlight. The creature's eyes were pale violet, and they stared at him with an intelligence that made his skin prickle. One of its legs was crushed beneath a heavy piece of metal, and patches of its fur were scorched black from radiation burns. The creature made a soft chirping sound, barely audible through his helmet's external audio sensors. It was in pain. It was dying. Taeyong's training kicked in immediately. Unknown alien life forms had to be reported to the Colonial Authority. Quarantine protocols existed for good reasons. The station's biology labs would want to study it. His supervisor would want to know about this within the hour. But as Taeyong floated there, watching the creature struggle weakly against its trap, all he could think about was the fear in those violet eyes. This was a living being, in pain. Nothing else seemed to matter in that moment. He made his decision quickly, before common sense could change his mind. Using his cutting torch, he carefully freed the creature from the debris. It didn't struggle as he gathered it into his arms, which either meant it trusted him or was too weak to fight. He hoped it was the former. Getting back to the station without being detected was nerve-wracking. Taeyong timed his entry through an auxiliary airlock during the shift change, when fewer people were monitoring the security feeds. He wrapped the creature in an emergency thermal blanket and moved through the corridors as quickly as he dared, praying he wouldn't run into anyone. His quarters were small, just a sleeping pod, a tiny desk, and a storage locker. He laid the creature on his bed and finally got a good look at it under proper lighting. It was beautiful and strange. The white fur seemed to shimmer with faint colors when it moved. The creature's breathing was shallow and rapid. Taeyong had no idea how to treat an alien, but he knew mechanics and he knew basic first aid. He started with what he could see. The crushed leg needed stabilization. Using materials from his toolkit, he fashioned a splint from lightweight aluminum struts and secured it with medical tape he had stolen from the infirmary. The creature whimpered, but didn't try to bite him. The radiation burns were worse. He had ointment for minor radiation exposure that all station workers carried, but he had no idea if it would work on alien biology. He applied it anyway, working as gently as he could. The creature watched him the entire time, with those strange violet eyes. A knock on his door made his heart nearly stop. "Taeyong, you in there?" It was his neighbor, Bo-Ra Kim. She worked in hydroponics, growing the vegetables that supplemented their protein rations. He considered not answering, but Bo-Ra was persistent. She would keep knocking. He opened the door just enough to slip through, and closed it quickly behind him. "What's going on?" Bo-Ra asked, her eyes narrowing. "You look guilty of something." Taeyong had never been good at lying. His face always gave him away. Bo-Ra had known him long enough to read him easily. "Let me in," she said quietly. It wasn't a request. He stepped aside and let her enter. Bo-Ra saw the creature on his bed and froze. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she turned to look at him with wide eyes. "Are you completely insane?" she whispered. "Do you know what they'll do if they find out you have this thing?" "It was dying," Taeyang said simply. "I couldn't just leave it." Bo-Ra stared at him, then at the creature, then back at him. She ran a hand through her short black hair, a gesture she always made when stressed. Finally, she sighed deeply. "You're going to need help," she said. "That thing needs nutrients. I can synthesize something from the hydroponics lab that might work. But Taeyang, if we get caught..." "I know," he said. "You don't have to help. I won't blame you if you report this." Bo-Ra gave him a look that was half annoyed, half fond. Over the following 3 weeks, Taeyang and Bo-Ra became very good at sneaking around. They took turns watching the creature, which Taeyang had started calling Biol. The name meant star in Korean, and it seemed fitting for something he had found floating among the stars. Biol healed slowly but steadily. The splint worked, and the leg began to mend. The radiation burns faded. More importantly, Biol began to trust them. The creature would make different chirping sounds that seemed to convey meaning. When Taeyang worked on his data pad, Biol would watch with clear interest. Once, when he was repairing a small drone, Biol used its nose to push a tool closer to his hand. "It's smart," Bo-Ra said one evening, watching Biol solve a simple puzzle she had created from spare parts. "Really smart. Maybe smarter than us," Taeyang nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. Biol wasn't just an animal. This was a being with intelligence. Maybe even sapience. The thought made what he had done feel even more right, and also more terrifying. If Biol's species ever found out one of their own had nearly died here, what would they do? But there was no time to worry about that. Biol was getting stronger every day, and the creature had started pacing the small room, clearly restless. It needed to leave, and soon someone would discover what they had been hiding. On the 23rd day, Taeyang made his plan. He studied the shift schedules and security camera patterns until he found a window of opportunity. During the late shift change, when most of the security personnel were focused on internal station matters, he could access the auxiliary airlock in Section 12. He explained his plan to Biol as best he could, though he had no idea how much the creature understood. When the time came, he wrapped Biol in the thermal blanket again and made the journey through the corridors. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. The airlock was empty. He sealed the inner door and set Biol down. The creature looked at him with those violet eyes and made a soft, trilling sound. Then, impossibly, Biol's fur shifted colors, creating patterns that seemed almost like words. Taeyang didn't understand them, but he felt their meaning. Gratitude, farewell, memory. He opened the outer door. Biol bounded forward and leaped into the vacuum of space. Taeyang watched through the porthole as the white creature moved gracefully through the airless void, its body somehow adapted to survive where humans needed suits. Biol paused once, looked back at the station, then disappeared into the asteroid field. Taeyang closed the airlock and leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. He had saved a life. Whatever consequences came next, he knew he would make the same choice again. The security office was cold, or maybe that was just Taeyang's fear making him shiver. 3 officers sat across from him, and none of them looked friendly. On the screen behind them, security footage showed him carrying a suspicious bundle through the corridors. Another clip showed him at the auxiliary airlock. "We reviewed all the footage," the chief security officer said. Her name was Hyjin, and she had always been fair with him before, but today her face was hard as stone. "We know you took something onto this station, and then released it into space. What was it?" Oper face. Oper face. Oper face. Taeyang could have lied. He could have said it was personal belongings he was disposing of, or equipment he was testing, but lies never sat well with him. And these people would find out the truth, eventually anyway. An alien creature, he said quietly. It was injured in the meteor shower. I treated its wounds and released it when it was healthy enough to survive. The room erupted. All three officers started talking at once, their voices rising in anger and disbelief. Questions flew at him like bullets. Why didn't he report it? Did he understand the protocols? What if the creature carried diseases? What if its species came looking for it? Tae-young answered each question honestly. Yes. He knew the protocols. No. He didn't think about diseases at the time. Yes. He understood he had broken multiple regulations. And no, he didn't regret it. That last answer made Haejin pause. She studied him for a long moment, then dismissed the other officers. When they were alone, she leaned forward. You're a good worker, Tae-young. I've seen your record. She shook her head. I have to report this to the Colonial Authority. And your supervisor is furious. Daeho has been arguing for your immediate dismissal. I understand, Tae-young said. Do you? Haejin asked. Do you really understand what you've risked? Not just your job, but potentially this entire station? We don't know what that creature was or where it came from. For all we know, you just invited a very dangerous species to take interest in us. Tae-young had no good answer for that. She was right. He had acted on emotion, rather than logic, on compassion, rather than safety. But even knowing all of this, he still couldn't make himself regret saving Biol. The punishment came down a week later. Demotion to basic maintenance worker, loss of 6 months' salary, and probation for 1 year. It could have been worse. He could have been fired, or even arrested and sent back to Earth for trial. But the station needed every worker it had, and apparently, someone higher up had decided that compassion, while foolish, wasn't quite criminal. Daeho made sure Tae-young paid for his decision in other ways. The worst jobs always went to him now. Cleaning the sewage recyclers, repairing equipment in the coldest sections of the station, working double shifts when others called in sick. Daeho never missed an opportunity to remind Tae-young of his stupidity. Bora faced her own consequences. She received an official reprimand and a fine, though smaller than Tae-young's. But she didn't complain. During their rare breaks together, she would just shake her head and smile. We did the right thing, she would say. Even if everyone else thinks we're idiots. Tae-young appreciated her loyalty more than he could express. In a place as isolated as Hanul 17, having even one person on your side made all the difference. Months passed. The routine of station life continued. Workers mined asteroids, processed ore, and dreamed of the day they could afford to leave. Supplies came and went on the monthly transport ships. The incident with the alien creature became just another story, told in the mess hall to new arrivals as a warning about breaking protocol. But Tae-young never forgot. Sometimes, during his exterior repairs, he would pause and scan the asteroid field. He told himself he was just checking for debris. But he knew the truth. He was looking for a flash of white, a glimpse of violet eyes. He never saw anything. 6 months after Biol's release, new problems began to plague the station. Pirate attacks were increasing throughout this sector of the asteroid belt. Small ships would strike at isolated mining operations, stealing refined ore and supplies before vanishing back into the rocks. The Colonial Defense Force was spread too thin to provide adequate protection to every outpost, and Hanul 17 was considered low priority. The station's own defenses were minimal. A few point defense cannons to shoot down incoming debris, and some old plasma turrets that hadn't been properly maintained in years. The workers knew that if a serious pirate fleet decided to attack, they wouldn't stand a chance. Tension grew among the crew. Arguments broke out more frequently. Some workers wanted to abandon the station and find safer employment. Others argued they had contracts to fulfill, and debts to pay. The station's commander, Young-Mi Han, tried to keep morale up, but even she looked worried during the daily briefings. One evening, after a particularly long shift repairing hull plating, Tae-young returned to his quarters exhausted. He had just collapsed onto his bed when his personal communicator chirped. That was unusual. Most communication went through the station's official channels. He picked it up and checked the display. Unknown source. The message was strange. Not text, but a series of audio tones. Chirps and trills that followed a specific pattern. A pattern he recognized. Tae-young sat up straight, his exhaustion forgotten. He played the message again, his hands shaking slightly. It was definitely Biol's chirping pattern, the same sounds the creature had made during those 3 weeks in his quarters. But how? And from where? He checked the message data. It included coordinates, a location deep in the asteroid field, several hours away by shuttle. There was nothing else. Just those chirps and those coordinates. Tae-young wanted to investigate immediately, but he had no authorization for shuttle use. His current position gave him access to basic tools and equipment. Nothing more. He could request permission, but explaining why would mean revealing the message, and he had no idea how to explain that. He sat in his quarters for a long time, listening to those chirps over and over. Was it really Biol? Or was this some kind of trap? Pirates sometimes used strange lures to draw workers away from stations, but pirates wouldn't know about Biol, wouldn't know those specific sounds. Bo-ra came by the next day during lunch break. He showed her the message. She listened carefully, her expression thoughtful. "It's been 6 months," she said. "That creature could be anywhere by now. This might not even be from it." "I know," Tae-young said. "But what if it is?" Bo-ra didn't have an answer for that. They sat together in silence, both wondering about the white creature they had saved and what it might be trying to tell them. The message came again the next day. Same chirps, same coordinates, and then again, the day after that. Each time, Tae-young felt more certain it was Biol, and more frustrated that he couldn't respond or investigate. On the 4th day, something changed. The station's long-range sensors picked up unusual activity in the sector. Ships were moving through the asteroid field, but they didn't match any known configurations. They weren't mining vessels or transports. They weren't even pirate ships, which had recognizable silhouettes. Young-mi called an emergency meeting. All senior staff gathered in the command center, and through special permission, some junior staff like Bo-ra were included because of their specialized knowledge. Tae-young wasn't invited, but he heard about it later from Bo-ra. "They don't know what those ships are," she told him in hushed tones. "The sensors show 5 large vessels, moving in formation. They're not responding to hails. Young-mi has put the station on alert." Duard, Tume. Tae-young felt a chill run down his spine. 5 unknown ships, moving through the same sector where the coordinates in his message pointed. It couldn't be coincidence. That night, lying in his bed, Tae-young stared at the ceiling and thought about choices. He had chosen to save Biol, despite the rules, despite the risks. That choice had cost him professionally and financially, but he didn't regret it. Now he faced another choice. Those ships might be related to Biol. They might be the creature's people, come looking. Or they might be something else entirely. Something dangerous. Should he tell Young-mi about the messages? Should he mention Biol might be trying to make contact? But what if he was wrong? What if telling the truth only made things worse? He had already proven his judgment wasn't trusted. Why would anyone believe him now? The unknown ships continued their approach over the next 2 days. They were definitely headed toward Hanul 1-7, though they maintained their distance. The station's population grew more nervous with each passing hour. Rumors spread through the corridors. Some said they were aliens come to invade. Others whispered about secret military experiments gone wrong. A few optimistic souls hoped they were just explorers. Tae-young received the message one more time. The chirps were the same, but this time there was something added at the end. A new pattern. One he didn't recognize. It almost sounded like a question, or maybe a warning. He made his decision. Tomorrow, he would tell young me everything. About Biol. About the messages. About his suspicions. She might not believe him. She might punish him further. But if there was even a chance his information could help the station prepare for whatever was coming, he had to try. That night, Taeyang dreamed of violet eyes and white fur, of a creature that moved through vacuum as easily as others moved through air. In his dream, Biol was coming back. But he couldn't tell if it was a dream or a nightmare. Taeyang never made it to Youngmi's office. The unknown ships arrived first. He was in the middle of his shift, replacing worn cables in Section 9, when the alarm blared through the station. 3 sharp bursts. Pause. Then 3 more. Contact alert. Everyone knew what it meant. The mysterious vessels had finally come close enough to be considered a direct threat. Workers scrambled to their designated stations. Taeyang dropped his tools and ran toward the command center. He wasn't supposed to be there, but he had information that might matter. His heart pounded in his chest as he pushed through crowded corridors. The command center was chaos. Officers shouted into communicators, while multiple screens showed different views of space around the station. And there, filling the largest screen, was something that made Taeyang stop in his tracks. The ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of Hanul 17. Its hull seemed to shift and shimmer. Surfaces that looked almost organic, like living tissue rather than metal. Colors rippled across it in waves, predominantly white with streaks of violet. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. All defensive systems online, Youngmi was saying, her voice tight with stress. Prepare to fire warning shots if they come any closer. Someone get me a line to the Colonial Defense Force. Now. Commander. One of the officers called out. We're receiving a transmission. Audio only. But it's not any language in our database. Play it, Youngmi ordered. The speakers crackled to life, and Taeyang felt his knees go weak. Chirps and trills filled the command center, complex and layered, but unmistakable. He knew those sounds. He had lived with them for 3 weeks. Stop! He shouted, pushing forward through the crowd. Don't fire! I know what that is. Every eye in the command center turned to him. Youngmi's expression was somewhere between fury and confusion. What are you doing here, Park? This is a restricted area during an alert. That sound, Taeyang said quickly, pointing at the speakers. I've heard it before. It's the alien creature I saved. The one from the report. This is them. They're trying to communicate. Youngmi stared at him for a long moment. He could see her weighing his words, trying to decide if he was crazy or telling the truth. Finally, she made a decision. Can you respond to them? She asked. Taeyang nodded. I think so. Let me try. They gave him access to the communication system. His hands shook as he activated his personal communicator and played back one of Biol's old messages. The friendly chirping the creature had made when content. Then he transmitted it toward the ship. The response was immediate. The massive vessel's lights pulsed in rhythmic patterns, and new sounds came through the speakers, more complex than before, but with the same underlying tones. Then, something changed. A new voice came through, speaking in heavily accented but understandable English. We greet the station of humans. We seek the one called Taeyang Park, the one who showed compassion to Pale Wanderer. The command center erupted in whispers. Youngmi held up her hand for silence, then gestured for Taeyang to respond. This is Taeyang Park, he said, his voice barely steady. I'm here. Pale Wanderer wishes to meet you again, the voice said. We request permission to send a small craft with delegation. We mean no harm. We come to honor a debt of kindness. Youngmi looked at Taeyang with an expression he couldn't read. Then she took a deep breath and activated the communicator herself. This is Commander Youngmi Han. of Hanul 17. We grant permission for a small delegation to board, but understand that any hostile action will be met with defensive force. Understood, Commander. We are called the Mainali. We thank you for your trust. The next hour passed in a blur. A smaller craft detached from the massive ship and approached the station. Security teams were positioned at the main docking bay. Medical staff stood ready. Every screen in the command center showed the docking process from multiple angles. When the airlock finally opened, the Mainali emerged. They were quadrupedal, moving with fluid grace. Their fur ranged from pure white to pale gray, and their eyes glowed with soft violet light. They wore devices on their necks that Taeyang guessed were translators. There were 5 of them, but his attention locked onto the one in the lead. "Biol," he whispered. The creature's head snapped toward him immediately. Those violet eyes found him in the crowd, and the Mainali made a sound that needed no translation. Pure joy. Biol broke formation and bounded toward him, moving faster than seemed possible. Security officers raised their weapons, but Youngmi signaled them to stand down. Biol skidded to a stop in front of Taeyang and made a series of soft chirps. The translator device on its neck crackled to life. "Taeyang, friend, savior, I am returned." Taeyang knelt down, hardly believing this was real. "You're okay. You're really okay. More than okay." Biol's translator said, "I am healed. I am home. And I have told my people of your kindness." One of the other Mainali stepped forward, larger than the others, with fur that held streaks of silver. Its translator spoke with the same voice that had first made contact. "I am Elder Sukja of the Mainali. Pale Wanderer is of royal blood, scout of our people. When he disappeared during the great sickness that took so many of us, we feared him lost forever. You saved him, Taeyang Park, when you had no reason to do so, when your own rules told you not to. This is a debt we cannot ignore." "There's no debt," Taeyang said quickly. "I just did what anyone should do." Biol was hurt and needed help. "Ah," Elder Sukja said, and something in the translator's tone suggested approval. "But not anyone did help. Only you. This is significant." Youngmi stepped forward, her diplomatic instincts taking over. "Elder Sukja, we welcome you and your people to Hanul 17. This is an historic moment. First contact between our species. Not first contact," the elder corrected gently. "We have watched humans for 4 cycles of your planet. We have observed your colonies, your ships, your ways. We wish to understand you before revealing ourselves. Pale Wanderer's injury and rescue gave us reason to finally make contact. 4 years?" Youngmi said, surprise breaking through her professional demeanor. "You've been observing us? For 4 years?" "Yes. We needed to know if humans were a species worth knowing, one who takes from the stars or one who gives to them. Taeyang Park showed us which you could be." The elder explained more as they were led to a conference room. The Mainali had once been a vast civilization, spread across multiple star systems. Then came the plague, a disease that ravaged their population. Billions died. Their remaining people had gathered on a few ships, seeking to understand what had happened and how to prevent it from ever happening again. Biol, whose true name was longer and unpronounceable to human tongues, had been investigating the plague's origin in this sector when the meteor shower damaged his scout craft. He had barely made it to the asteroid field before his ship failed completely, leaving him stranded and injured. "I thought I would die among the rocks," Biol said through his translator, his violet eyes fixed on Taeyang. "I had accepted this. Then, you came, a human, a stranger, who chose to help rather than ignore, who risked punishment to save me. This choice changed everything." The Mainali had been debating whether to make contact with humans at all. Some argued humans were too violent, Too greedy, too focused on taking resources. Others believed humans showed potential for growth and wisdom. Taeyang's actions had tipped the balance. You showed Salma, Elder Sukja explained. In our language, it means something like nurturing, protection, wisdom, combined, the quality that makes civilization worth preserving. We see potential for this quality in your species. Bora, who had been allowed into the conference room because of her involvement, spoke up. But one person's actions don't represent all of humanity. Taeyang is special, but not all humans would do what he did. True, the elder acknowledged. But the seed exists. It can grow. This is what matters. The meeting continued for hours. The Mainali explained their technology, their philosophy, their hope to find other species who had survived what they called the Great Turmoil. Youngmi asked careful questions about their intentions and capabilities. Slowly, cautiously, the framework for an alliance began to take shape, but Taeyang barely heard most of it. He sat with Biol, occasionally reaching out to touch the soft white fur, still amazed that this was real. The creature he had saved on impulse had become the bridge between two species. Did you know? He asked quietly. When I was helping you, did you know you were important to your people? Yes, Biol admitted. But I could not communicate this to you. And even if I could, would it have changed your actions? Would you have saved me only because I was royal? Taeyang thought about that and shook his head. No, I saved you because you were hurt and scared. That's all that mattered. Exactly, Biol said, and his translator somehow conveyed satisfaction. This is why we came back. This is why you matter, Taeyang Park. Not because you saved a prince, because you saved a life. As the meeting finally wrapped up and the Mainali prepared to return to their ship, Elder Sukja approached Taeyang one more time. We will remain near your station for some time, the elder said. We have much to discuss with your leaders, many arrangements to make. But know this, Taeyang Park, the Mainali remember those who show Salma. We remember debts. And we protect those we consider worthy. Taeyang didn't fully understand what that meant at the time, but he would learn soon enough when the pirates came. The celebration in the station's main hall was unlike anything Hanyul 17 had ever seen. Workers who normally spent their evenings exhausted and irritable now laughed and shared stories. The Mainali delegation had been aboard for 3 days, and the initial fear had transformed into fascination. Biol moved through the crowd with natural ease, his white fur drawing attention everywhere. Children who lived on the station with their families gathered around him, and he seemed to enjoy their curiosity. Bora had prepared special dishes using her hydroponics knowledge, trying to create something both species could enjoy. Even Daeho had softened his attitude. Though he still avoided looking directly at Taeyang, Youngmi stood at the front of the hall, raising her glass. To new friends and new possibilities. To the Mainali, and to the future we might build together. Everyone cheered. Taeyang felt Bora elbow him gently in the ribs. You did this, she said quietly. This whole thing started because you couldn't leave an injured animal to die. I didn't do anything special, Taeyang protested. That's exactly what makes it special, Elder Sukja said, appearing beside them with surprising stealth. You did what felt right without expecting reward. This is rare, Taeyang Park. Rarer than you know. Before Taeyang could respond, the alarm cut through the celebration like a knife. Not the contact alarm this time, but something worse. The combat alarm. 3 long blasts that meant only one thing. Hostile forces. Detected. The hall emptied in seconds as people ran to their stations. Taeyang followed Youngmi toward the command center, his good mood evaporating. The Mainali delegation moved with them, their 4-legged gait carrying them smoothly through the corridors. The command center screens showed a nightmare. Ships were emerging from the asteroid field, dozens of them. They were mismatched vessels, clearly cobbled together from stolen parts, but they all bore the same markings. Pirates. and there were far more than the station's minimal defenses could handle. "Count," Youngmi snapped. "37 ships, Commander," an officer reported. "Multiple classes. They're positioning to surround us. Communications just received a demand to surrender all refined ore and supplies, or they'll breach the hull and take it by force." Youngmi's face went pale. 37 ships. The station's defenses might handle 5 or 6 before being overwhelmed. They had maybe a dozen small evacuation shuttles. Not nearly enough for the station's 2,000 workers. "Get me the Colonial Defense Force," she ordered. "Send distress signals on all channels. And start evacuation procedures for non-essential personnel." "Commander, the nearest Defense Force ship is 18 hours away," another officer said. "The pirates are demanding a response in 10 minutes. Taeyang watched the screens, his mind racing. This couldn't be coincidence. The pirates had waited until the Mayanali ship was here, probably thinking its presence meant valuable cargo had been delivered. They had no idea what they were really facing. Elder Sukja moved to stand beside young Mi. "Commander, please delay your response to the pirates if possible. We require a moment to confer with our ship." Young Mi looked at the elder, then at the screens showing the pirate fleet. She had nothing to lose by giving them a chance. "How long do you need?" 3 of your minutes." The elder and the other Mayanali moved to a corner of the command center. They made sounds that the translators didn't pick up, complex patterns of chirps and whistles. Taeyang saw their fur shift colors in rhythmic waves. Some kind of long-distance communication, he realized. Bayol came to stand beside him. "Do you trust us?" the translator asked. Taeyang didn't hesitate. "Yes. Good. Watch and understand what Salma means to the Mainali." The pirates sent another message, their voice rough and threatening through the speakers. "Time's running out. Station. We're not known for our patience. Start loading your ore onto transport shuttles now, or we start shooting holes in your hull." "Commander," Elder Sukja said, returning to Youngmi's side. "Please transmit this message to the pirate vessels. Tell them they are in violation of Mainali protected space. They have one opportunity to leave peacefully." The command center went silent. One of the officers actually laughed, though it sounded more like hysteria than humor. "With respect, Elder," Youngmi said carefully, "I don't think pirates will be impressed by territorial claims. They have 37 ships. You have 1. "Yes," Elder Sukja said simply. "Please send the message." Youngmi hesitated only a moment, then nodded. What did they have to lose? The message was transmitted. The pirate response was predictable. Crude laughter and mocking words. Then, their weapons systems went live. Energy signatures blazed across the station's sensors as the pirate ships charged their guns. "Incoming fire," an officer shouted. "Multiple ships targeting our defensive positions. Impact in 30 seconds. The Mayanali ship moved. One moment it had been positioned a safe distance from the station. The next it was between Hunnel 17 and the pirate fleet. Taeyang had never seen anything move so fast. The massive vessel simply appeared where it needed to be, as if space itself had folded to accommodate it. Then something extraordinary happened. The Mayanali ship's hull began to pulse with light, waves of color spreading across its surface. The station's sensors went haywire. The Mayanali ship, the culls, every screen showed conflicting data. Ships that weren't there, energy readings that made no sense. The communications array picked up dozens of signals, each one claiming to be a Colonial Defense Force vessel arriving through hyperspace. In the command center, they could see the truth, but the pirates couldn't. On their sensors, they suddenly faced an entire fleet appearing from nowhere. Panic spread through the pirate formation. Ships broke from their positions, trying to regroup. The Mainali ship moved again, flowing through space like water. It closed the distance to the nearest pirate vessel in seconds. But instead of weapons fire, it projected something else. A field of energy that washed over the pirate ship, and suddenly that vessel went dark. No weapons, no engines, nothing. Just a dead hulk, floating in space. Another pirate ship tried to run. The Mayanali vessel intercepted it effortlessly, and the same energy field disabled it. Then another, and another. The massive ship moved through the pirate fleet like a dancer, each movement precise and controlled. Pirates fired desperately, but their weapons seemed to pass through the Mayanali ship without effect, or were absorbed by shields that bent light around them. In less than 15 minutes, it was over. 37 pirate ships floated helplessly in space, their weapons disabled, their engines dead. The Mayanali ship had not destroyed a single vessel. It hadn't killed a single pirate. It had simply removed their ability to threaten anyone. The command center was absolutely silent. Every human present stared at the screens in disbelief. This was technology beyond anything they had imagined. Power that made humanity's most advanced weapons look like children's toys. Elder Sukja turned to address them, and his translator carried what might have been sadness. Then came the plague, and we learned that all our power meant nothing against death. We rebuilt ourselves with a new understanding. Strength without wisdom is just destruction. Power without compassion is just tyranny. Young Mi found her voice, though it shook. You could have destroyed those ships in seconds. Killed everyone aboard. Ah, yes, the elder agreed. But would that have been Salma? The pirates made poor choices born of desperation and greed. This does not mean they deserve death. We have removed their ability to harm others. Your colonial defense force can retrieve them and administer justice according to your laws. We have simply prevented tragedy, not created it. Taeyang felt Biol press against his leg. The translator spoke softly, meant only for him. Do you understand now? When you saved me, you could have turned me over to your authorities. You could have collected a reward, earned praise. But you chose to simply heal and release. No exploitation, no ownership. Just help and freedom. This is what convinced us that humans might understand Salma. But I'm just one person, Taeyang said. What I did was small. All great things begin small, Elder Sukja said, having heard the exchange. A single seed can become a forest. A single act of compassion can change civilizations. You saved Pale Wanderer. In doing so, you saved this station. And perhaps, you have saved your species from walking a darker path. The implications of his words slowly sank in throughout the command center. The Mayanali had been watching humanity for 4 years, deciding whether to make contact or leave humans alone. Taeyang's choice to save Biol hadn't just rescued one alien. It had opened a door to friendship with a species whose technology and philosophy could transform human civilization. Bora moved to stand beside Taeyang, her expression awed. Do you realize what just happened? We just witnessed what humanity could become if we learn from them. Young Mi approached Elder Sukja, and this time when she spoke, it was with deep respect. Elder, on behalf of Hanul 17 and the Colonial Authority, I formally thank you for your intervention. You saved many lives today. Manul, Elder. No thanks necessary, Commander. We protect those we have deemed worthy. Taeyang Park showed us that humans can choose compassion over convenience. Now we show you that the Mayanali remember such choices. This is the beginning of understanding between our peoples. The elder paused, his violet eyes surveying everyone in the command center. But understand this as well. We cannot be everywhere. We cannot protect all human stations. What we can do is share knowledge, share philosophy. Teach you what we learned through suffering and loss. Help you grow into the species you have the potential to become. If you wish to learn, we are willing to teach. Young Mi didn't hesitate. We wish to learn. Outside, the disabled pirate ships floated helplessly, waiting for Colonial Defense Force vessels to arrive. The Mayanali ship returned to its position near the station, its hull still shimmering with those impossible colors. And on Hanul 17, the celebration resumed, though now it carried a different tone. Not just joy at making new friends, but wonder at possibilities they had never imagined. Taeyang stood at an observation port, looking out at the stars. Bayal joined him. The alien's reflection, visible in the transparent aluminum beside his own. "You're going to stay for a while, aren't you?" Taeyang asked. "Yes," Bayal confirmed. "We have much to teach, and much to learn from you as well. And I promised myself that if I survived, I would return to thank the one who saved me. I keep my promises, Taeyang Park." Taeyang smiled. 4 years ago, he had been an ordinary mechanic, making an ordinary salary on an ordinary station. Now, he stood beside an alien prince, having accidentally become the bridge between two civilizations. Life, he reflected, was strange and wonderful in equal measure. "Thank you for coming back," he said simply. "Thank you for making it possible," Bayal replied. "Now come. We have a future to build together." The news spread through human space like fire through dry grass. Within days, every colony, every station, every ship had heard about Hanul 17 and the Mainali, the story of how a simple mechanic had saved an alien, and how that alien's people had returned to save an entire station, became the most talked about event in human history. Taeyang found himself at the center of a storm he never wanted. News crews arrived on transport ships, demanding interviews. Colonial authority officials came to investigate and verify every detail. Scientists wanted to study the Mainali technology. Politicians wanted to negotiate treaties. Everyone wanted something from him. He hated it. The attention made him uncomfortable. He was just a mechanic who had done what seemed right. He didn't want to be a symbol or a hero. He just wanted to return to his work, to the simple life he understood. But Elder Sukja had other ideas. "You cannot hide from this, Taeyang Park," the elder said during one of their many conversations. "You are the connection between our peoples. Your actions created this bridge. You must help maintain it." "I'm not a diplomat," Taeyang protested. "I don't know how to talk to politicians or negotiate treaties. I fix things. That's what I'm good at." "Exactly," Biol said, his translator carrying what might have been amusement. "You fix things. Right now, humans and Mainali are broken from each other by centuries of no contact. You can help fix that." Youngmi, who had been present for the conversation, nodded in agreement. "The colonial authority is sending their best diplomatic team. They're offering you a position as official liaison between humanity and the Mainali. It comes with significant salary increase, prestige, and influence." Taeyang shook his head immediately. "No, I don't want that." "Then what do you want?" Youngmi asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Taeyang thought about that question for a long time. What did he want? He looked around the small conference room where they met. Through the window, he could see workers moving through the corridors. People like him, ordinary people just trying to survive and maybe make a better life. People who lived on the frontier, far from Earth's comforts and protections. "I want the Alliance to help people like us," he finally said. Workers on remote stations. Families living in places the colonial authority barely remembers. If the Mainali are going to share their technology and knowledge, I want it to reach the people who need it most. Not just the rich or powerful. Elder Sukja made a sound that the translator rendered as approval. "This is Salma thinking. To consider those without voice or power. Very well, Taeyang Park. We will make this condition of our alliance. Technologies shared must benefit all humans, not merely the elite. Is this acceptable, Commander?" Youngmi smiled. "I'll make sure the colonial authority understands. This is non-negotiable." Number 1. Over the following weeks, formal negotiations began. The colonial authority sent an entire delegation, led by a career diplomat named Wu Jin, who had spent 30 years handling first contact situations. He was professional, efficient, and clearly uncomfortable with the fact that a mechanic with no training had already established better relations with the aliens than any official could. But the Mainali were clear about their preferences. They trusted Tae-young. They listened to his input. When disagreements arose during negotiations, they often turned to him to understand the human perspective. Woojin learned quickly that trying to sideline Tae-young only made the Mainali less cooperative. The alliance that emerged was unlike anything in human history. The Mainali agreed to share certain technologies, always with the condition that they be distributed fairly. Medical advances that could cure diseases humanity had struggled with for centuries. Agricultural methods that could make remote colonies self-sufficient. Energy systems that were clean and virtually limitless. In exchange, humans offered something the Mainali valued deeply: diversity of thought. The Mainali had lost so much of their population to the plague that their culture had become somewhat stagnant. They wanted to learn human art, human music, human philosophy. They wanted to understand how humans saw the universe. Bo-Ra found her calling in this exchange. She accepted a position heading the agricultural exchange program, teaching Mainali methods to human farmers while learning from them in return. Within months, stations throughout the sector reported dramatic improvements in food production. Even Dae-ho found his place. The man who had punished Tae-young so harshly for breaking protocol was humbled by events. He approached Tae-young one day, his face showing more emotion than usual. "I was wrong," Dae-ho said simply. "I thought following rules was most important. But you taught me that sometimes compassion matters more than protocol. I'm retiring from station management. I'm going to write about what happened here, so others can learn from it." Tae-young accepted the apology with grace. Holding grudges had never been in his nature. The most significant change came in how humanity approached exploration and expansion. The Mainali introduced humans to other species they had encountered, creating a network of civilizations who had all survived what the Mainali called the Great Turmoil. Wars, plagues, disasters that had nearly ended advanced life throughout the galaxy. These species formed a loose coalition based not on military might or economic power, but on shared values. The principle of Salma became a foundation for interaction. Help when possible, protect the vulnerable, act with wisdom rather than merely strength. Tae-young declined every high-ranking position offered to him. He remained on Hanul 17, working as a mechanic. But now, his work had expanded. Mainali engineers worked alongside him, learning human techniques while teaching their own. The station had become a hub for cultural and technological exchange. Young Mi, recognizing the station's new importance, was promoted to ambassador. She oversaw the growing community of humans and Mainali who made Hanul 17 their home. The remote mining station had transformed into something unprecedented, a place where two species lived and worked together as equals. 6 months after the pirate attack, Tae-young stood in the new observation deck that had been built specifically for cultural gatherings. Below him, workers moved through expanded corridors. Some were human, some were Mainali. Children played together, learning each other's languages, naturally. Bile joined him, as the alien often did during quiet moments. Their friendship had deepened over the months. They understood each other in ways that transcended species. "Do you regret it?" Biol asked. "The simple life you lost?" Tae-young considered the question. His life was certainly more complicated now. More responsibility, more attention, more everything. But when he looked at what they had built, at the cooperation and friendship growing between species, he couldn't regret his choices. "No," he said honestly. "Though I miss the days when I could work in peace without someone wanting an interview." Biol's translator carried the sound of laughter. "You should have thought of that before saving a prince. You never told me you were royalty," Tae-young pointed out. "And you were just a mechanic who chose compassion over convenience," Biol replied. "This is why you matter, Tae-young. Not because you saved someone important, because you saved someone at all." A young human child ran past, chasing a young Mainali in some game they had invented together. The Mainali pup's fur was beginning to show the pale colors of adulthood, while the human child laughed with pure joy. They were the future, Taeyang realized. A generation that would grow up seeing the other species not as aliens, but as friends. Bora arrived, slightly out of breath. There you are. The colonial authority is calling again. They want you to speak at a conference on Earth, something about inspiring the next generation of explorers. Taeyang groaned. Can't they find someone else? They could, Bora said with a smile. But they won't. You're the one who started this, whether you wanted to or not. Besides, Elder Sukja says if you go, he'll send Biol with you. Apparently, the Mainali want to see Earth. I would enjoy seeing your homeworld, Biol confirmed. And I promise to protect you from the journalists. Despite himself, Taeyang smiled. Life had become strange and complicated, but it had also become full of purpose. He had fixed something important, not with tools and welding torches, but with simple human compassion. Fine, he agreed. But only if you promise we can come back quickly. I have work to do here. Always the mechanic, Bora teased. Always, Taeyang confirmed. That evening, the station held another celebration. These had become regular events, opportunities for both species to share food, stories, and music. Taeyang watched from his usual spot, comfortable in the background while others danced and sang. Elder Sukja approached, his silver-streaked fur marking his age and wisdom. Not troubled exactly, Taeyang said. Just thinking. All of this happened because I broke the rules. Because I ignored protocol, and training, and common sense. What if I had been wrong? What if Biol had been dangerous? But he was not dangerous, the elder said simply. And you knew this. Not with your mind, perhaps, but with something deeper. Humans call it intuition, I believe. The ability to sense truth beyond facts. You're saying I got lucky. I am saying you listened to your heart while also using your mind. This is wisdom. You assessed the situation, saw a being in pain, and chose compassion. Yes, you took a risk. But risks taken for good reasons often lead to good outcomes. The elder paused, watching the celebration. The Mainali nearly destroyed ourselves with certainty. We thought we knew the right way to live, to govern, to expand. We followed our rules perfectly, and still the plague came. And still we suffered. It was only by learning to question, to feel, to sometimes break our own rules in service of compassion, that we survived. So you're saying rules aren't important? No. Rules provide structure and safety. But rules without wisdom become prisons. You showed the courage to know when compassion mattered more than protocol. This courage, this wisdom, is what your species needs to develop. This is what we hope to help cultivate through our alliance. Taeyang thought about that for a long time. Maybe he hadn't just saved one alien. Maybe, in some small way, he had helped save humanity from becoming too rigid, too focused on rules and efficiency to remember compassion. It was a big thought for a mechanic. Too big, really. He preferred thinking about mechanical problems with clear solutions. But if this was his role now, to remind people that compassion mattered, he would do his best. Biol bounded over, his translator carrying excitement. Come, Taeyang. The children want you to tell the story again. About finding me in the asteroids. I've told that story 100 times, Taeyang protested. And they want to hear it 100 more, Bora said, joining them. Because it's a good story. A true story about doing the right thing, even when it's hard. Taeyang let them lead him to where the children had gathered, human and Mainali together. They looked up at him with eager eyes, waiting for his words. He began the story simply, the way he always did. I was just doing my job, fixing a sensor array, when I saw something white against the dark rocks. As he spoke, he realized this was his real work now. Not just fixing machines, but helping to fix the broken connection between species, not through grand diplomacy or brilliant strategy, but through simple stories that reminded everyone of a basic truth. Compassion matters. Kindness matters. Sometimes, saving one life can change everything. The children listened. Humans and Mainali together, learning about a future where both species thrived, not because of technology or power, but because they had chosen to be better, to help rather than harm, to nurture rather than destroy. Outside the station, stars shined in the endless dark. And in that darkness, more ships traveled, more species explored, more opportunities arose for connection or conflict. But here, on Hanwul 17, two species had proven that connection was possible. That friendship could bridge the impossible gap between worlds, all because a mechanic had seen an injured creature and chosen compassion over convenience. All because he had saved an albino leopard among the stars, and it had returned to save him in turn. This was just the beginning, Taeyang knew. The real work of building this alliance, of learning to live together, would take generations. There would be mistakes and misunderstandings, challenges they couldn't yet imagine, but they would face them together, human and Mainali, guided by the principle that had brought them together. Salma. The nurturing protection wisdom that made civilization worth preserving. And maybe, just maybe, other species out there, in the vast dark, would see what they had built and choose to join them, creating not an empire of conquest, but a community of compassion, not taking from the stars, but giving to them. Taeyang finished his story. The children cheered and ran off to play their games. Biol pressed against his side, warm and solid and real. Ready for tomorrow? The alien asked. Ready for whatever comes, Taeyang answered. And together, human and Mainali, mechanic and prince, friend and friend, they watched the stars and dreamed of the future they would build among them.